folks. My name is Mo Amir, and this is VANCOLOUR, British Columbia's bona fide culture and politics TV talk show. Tonight is all about housing. And I know we talk about housing all the time, but I want to find out if a landlord can actually, legally, tell a tenant that they're not allowed to have guests or even have a beer in the home that the tenant is paying money to live in. But first, for a housing crisis, have BC municipalities like Vancouver deployed every tool in the policy toolbox to make rents cheaper? You'll be shocked to learn that no, they haven't. Here to tell us more is a former Vancouver City Council candidate and a writer for Scout magazine, backed by popular demand. He is Sean Orr. Sean, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for returning to the program. So many people have been hounding me.
Yeah, I can't control that. I'm sorry.
So you and I are on the same page when it comes to municipalities and what they can do with regards to the housing crisis. Oftentimes, municipalities kind of shrug their shoulders and go, oh, it's a provincial thing, it's a federal thing. But I think of things like Airbnb, where they can actually enforce the rules. They can maybe ban Airbnb or at least create more restrictions. You have some other ideas that they can really do, but they're not pursuing. What do you got in mind?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you kind of mentioned it off the top, we have to act like this is a crisis.
Yeah.
And by calling it a housing crisis kind of ignores the fact that it's a manufactured crisis. Like we know what to do. We just don't have the political will, because it would mean lowering house prices for people. And as you put it so eloquently on your last segment, I got mine. You. But yeah, there are so many mechanisms that cities can do. I even asked, ChatGPT for bold housing solutions.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
What did it tell you?
It's more innovative and creative than any politician that I've heard, other than myself. But it came up with a pretty comprehensive list of things that it could be doing, like a toolkit of things that it could be doing that we just aren't.
Okay, list them off for me.
Let's see. Sorry, I have to check my notes because so community land trusts, I really like that one. Universal basic housing, rent control, which we're sort of going to touch on in a second here. Empty homes taxes, as we have here, but are could be tripling them, or what we're doing, retroactive giveaways to developers. Housing co-ops, zoning and land use reform is a big one. Affordable housing vouchers, building public housing, for example. Wow, what a concept.
Let's talk about rent control and specifically vacancy control. I'm a little curious about this one. Basically, if you are renting, there's only a certain amount that they can increase, but if you move out, the new tenants would have to pay a lot more. They can basically pay, or they would have to pay whatever, the landlord would set.
Or whatever the market bears, right?
Yeah.
And that is looking like an average of about 43%.
From tenant to a new tenant.
From a tenant to a new tenant. And
so what does vacancy control
Vacancy
do?
Control ties the rent to the unit instead of to the renter. So when a renter leaves, the unit kind of stays at the same rent.
Okay. Yeah. So basically the same protection as renters currently have, but then just extending it for if the renter moves out.
Exactly. Okay. And that affects everything. I mean, you get to a point where new buildings and older rental units are at the same price.
Right.
Essentially. And
you've also talked about the right of first refusal. What is that when it comes to municipalities? What kind of policy is that?
Right of first refusal is really interesting, something I really like. Montreal does it. And it's something where a municipality has the right to first refuse a building that comes up on the market. Okay. So an apartment comes up on the market, or a rooming house or an SRO comes up, and the city has the first right to say, we want this and we want to include this in our public housing stock.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that makes sense. And then aside from that, the city also has, or a lot of cities have, public land, specifically Vancouver as well, right?
That's true. I mean, it can be a little controversial. I mean, we own public golf courses, and that wasn't very popular during my campaign. But the Vancouver school...
Certainly in some neighborhoods, I'm sure, to turn public golf courses into social housing, I'm sure was not popular. But aside from golf courses, are there other lands as well?
The Vancouver School Board owns, I think it's 242 hectares of land, and that includes 125 individual buildings.
And these are not schools?
Not schools. This is property in their portfolio that they own. I think it totals around $7 billion.
Wow.
And you know, some of these properties have been earmarked, you know, for sale, to give away to developers. And if we are going to tackle it like a crisis, that's land that we build on.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sorry, East Van. I know Kingsgate Mall is very popular, but you know,
maybe make it into some housing.
It's got like, you know, 40 stories of social
housing.
What's
fascinating about all these things that you've talked about is that other jurisdictions are doing them. Even vacancy control. You know, there is a form of that in Westminster.
There is,
and so even though we're looking at Vancouver, this has, you know, this can resonate with other municipalities throughout BC.
Absolutely. And British Columbia had vacancy control in the 70s. Right. And so when the argument is that, you know, it'll detract from investors or whatnot, I mean, which is good. You want the financialization of housing, in my opinion.
Certainly bring down rents, absolutely.
Exactly, yeah. Right? But it didn't have the sort of effect that the landlord lobby would have you believe. It was, you know, it was a fairly successful program in the 70s, and then we got rid of it. I mean, you talked to Alex Hemingway, I'm sure he talked about progressive property tax. We could have had that in 1993, you know, but the housing lobby said, you know, what?
I'm not going to say it again. I got in trouble. Sean, a pleasure. Thank you so much for illuminating us with these many policy options. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Right. Folks, you wanted more Orr, you got more Orr. Of course, he is Sean Orr. Now, after some business, there are rental listings with wild conditions for tenants beyond just the outrageous cost of rent. TikTok star Papa is going to tell us about them, and Vancouver City Councillor Christine Boyle is going to explain whether these demands are even legal. That's up next.